Good morning and welcome back to the Red Barn Enterprises Virtual Field Day 2020, the Summer of Change. This week, Dr. Field will be sharing with us his ideas about humans and machines incorporating talent and technology. First, I want to take a quick minute to do a recap of last week's topic, disruptions and the forces of change. A couple things that Tom said toward the end really struck me closely, and one of them was that we need to tell our story. And when we do tell that story in agriculture to combat some of the things that are disrupting our industry, we may be using messaging that's similar to what was used against us not very many years ago. And then one of the things that I thought was extremely interesting was that incorporating more of this disruptive technology could actually humanize the process, because it would give us more time to interact with each other versus doing the work. So I just thought those were really interesting points there about disruption and change. And so now we're going to have Tom share with us about humans and machines and incorporating talent and technology.
Thanks, Matt. This is an interesting space. This whole notion of how human beings and the machines that we use, how we work together. And this is also really not a new thing. I mean, we've been using and harnessing technology for generations. But clearly, if you look at the farm of the future, right? And I love this picture because here is a person at the center, but who is connected to devices all across the farm. And I think it's a really intriguing vision of the future, and for many of you, it's already coming true. But the key is the person is still in the center, and I think that's something we want to be really thoughtful about. And I'm going to try to make the case for that as we go through the presentation today. The other thing that big data is. It's a hot topic. It's something that there's a lot of discussion around. Who owns the data, right? Reverse hacking data out of machines that somebody else built that we bought, and it's our data as a farmer or rancher. Those are important questions. But the thing I want to make clear about big data is once you collect a lot of data, what you have is a storage problem. Only if you can harness the data do you have value, right? So collecting big data, cool, wonderful, but so what, right? You've seen the TV show Hoarders. Well, we hoard a lot of data, but we don't know what to do with it. The key is how do we figure out how to create real value out of data, and that involves analytics and involves human creativity. Severino Romero from Beecham Research said, look, our goal should not be industrialization, but to make agriculture more efficient. Now, I will tell you that if I had made this statement, I would change out efficient, I'd put profitable in, because I think efficiency, while important, the goal ultimately is profitability, right? I can have a very efficient and very unprofitable ranch. We've done that a time or two. And not be where I want to be. So put profit in that space, but it's his quote, to make agriculture more sustainable. And again, sustainability is not a word that I freak out about, right? We've been talking about sustainability for generations in our family. We started ranching in Western Colorado right after the Civil War. And so we've been in a sustainability exercise for a couple hundred years. And then I think the most important thing is how do we make what we do higher quality, both for consumers and for ourselves, right? How can I create a higher quality farming experience for the people who are in farming and who are affected by farming? We should not look for revolutions, he said, but reinterpretation of farming practices through the use of data-centric technologies. And so again, we always hear these things like, okay, a couple of years ago, 2/3 of the jobs are going to disappear due to artificial intelligence. Okay, let's just be super honest about that. 66% of the jobs disappear in the world. If we thought the riots in Portland were ugly, make 66% of the jobs go away, right? So let's be honest about this, right? We have to be careful not to read the extremes. I think data, technology, and smart machines are tools. No more, no less. We're going to pick them up off the tool bench sometimes, and we're going to leave them on the tool bench others. That's my opinion. And again, right? I'm classified as a young boomer. I'm super happy about the young piece of the young boomer. But right, so you're probably getting a little bit of an old guy's vision here. But I think I don't think we need to be as fearful of these changes as perhaps sometimes they're made out to be. So what does the future look like? I think there are 5 big kind of components in smart technology. Data analytics is number one. And we've been analyzing data for a long time. Right? I mean, Robert Bakewell, way back at kind of the father of modern livestock genetics, back in merry old England, he was doing data analytics in a pretty simplistic way, but he was doing data analytics. Sensing technologies, right? Quite frankly, I would love to be able to look on my computer screen right now and know which water tanks on our permits in the high country of Colorado actually have water in them. Sensing technology will allow me to do that, especially when I couple it with geopositioning, right? And it's not that I'm going to quit managing. It's just that if I don't need to send a crew to that tank, that saves them time and me money. So I think there's a lot of value in that. I'd like to, the Internet of Things, the ability to connect pieces so that we know where, when a door opens in a hog barn, for example, when you start connecting all this stuff up, you just get a more robust view of what's going on in the world, and you're getting it in real time, which means we can then do preventative maintenance as opposed to fixing the problem. The building I'm in here at the university this last weekend, and this is a dear old building, it is an old building. We had a little water problem down on the other end of the building. Well, we didn't find that until Monday morning, right? It would have been a lot better if we'd have found that on Saturday morning, right? So Internet of Things and sensing technology would have changed that, and it would save money, time, and energy. Geopositioning, this is one I'm really intrigued with. And I think geopositioning is interesting because satellite technology is getting cheaper, and satellite receiving stations are now highly mobile. So, for example, and I don't study them carefully, but I watch them a fair bit. I watch what the military does, right? Because the military have to manage geopositioning a lot, and all of a sudden there's a lot of startup companies sort of showing up that are able to put satellite arrays at the speed of commerce that we want to operate in, right? For some, that array, you need data downloading every minute because you've got a really critical asset that you're dealing with. In farming, frankly, I can probably live with data drops potentially twice a day, 4 times a day, which is a cheaper satellite array. That's right. I'm going to grab the data 4 times a day or twice a day or even daily. And then I'm going to warehouse it and then I'm going to analyze it. Well, that's what geopositioning kind of helps us do over time. And then automation. And let's face it, we're going to have to figure out how to bring robots and cobots into processing. There's no question about it in my mind now. We just have to do it because that's what COVID-19 exposed in the supply chain. It exposed that in places where we highly concentrate people in a relatively wet environment, that we have the potential for rapid transfer. And we weren't prepared for that, quite frankly. I don't think, we've worked our way back out of it, but man, that was pretty intense. And so I think automation is a big deal in that space for the future. Now, the name of the game in all of this, and there's all these technologies, right? We've got aerial monitoring, ground monitoring, automation, analysis and decision-making, capability creation, all these processes going on. The name of the game is how do we integrate it? And what's really interesting is that there's a whole lot of talent coming to the game on this. This particular slide is adapted from a research group at Stanford, right? And one wouldn't think of Stanford as a premier agricultural institution, But we're seeing MIT, Stanford, and others beginning to look at agriculture and saying, look, there's all kinds of opportunities to create value. And I think it's one of the most important things we can do as an industry is begin to engage with the tech community in a really thoughtful, meaningful, powerful way. With us still in control, you don't ever want to hand control over to the techies because they love their technology too much. But we want to be engaged with them, right? And I think it's an important step for us as an industry, and it's one that we've really got to get serious about. At the end of the day, though, in all of this, right, if we don't trust it, we're not going to use it. If a consumer doesn't trust it, they won't buy it. It's just that simple. Trust does not change. I think if we really step back from it all, at least from my perspective, we step back from all the challenges facing our society today, they're all at some level tied to a trust problem. So how do we take care of that, right? And that's something that we can't count on the machine to do by themselves. But we can apply these technologies to the supply chain, to the process. So, for example, we want to get better as ranchers. So if we can take data and translate that to operational excellence, that's good for our business. It's good for our team. It's good for our employees. It's good for our ownership group. Data translated to supply chain orchestration. That's going to matter. And it's going to matter. Supply chains are not going to go away. We're going to get better at them. And we're going to start aligning with them in a completely different and unique way. So this is one that I think is really intriguing. How do we deal with the supply chain, and how do we move data across that supply chain in a transparent, fair, equitable way? And eventually it comes down to system transparency, right? For consumers, they want to feel reassured that the things that we say we do actually get done. That ultimately is transparency. So what does that really mean? What it really means is how do we develop tracking and traceability systems? And there's a lot of philosophical debate around this one, but I think that's one of the things that technology will eventually help us do, and quite frankly can be done to where it creates protection in the system for all parties. So traceability and transparency, it's one step back, one step up. It's trying to figure out the what, where, and when. It's trying to look at disparate methods of going at things. Transparency, it's this interconnected view of things. Transparency provides us the opportunity to share with the supply chain how things are produced. And I'm going to tell you something I believe deeply. I think that the average publicly traded company CEO is far more nervous about stuff than the average consumer. Why? Because the average CEO is scared to death of the activist investor. They're terrified of it, right? Because they create all kinds of trouble and problems. So my notion is that reassuring the supply chain itself, the actual players in the supply chain, is actually a more critical step than trying to assure consumers, because by and large, I think consumers are still relatively trusting of the food supply. Now, it doesn't mean we can mess that up. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be focused there. But at the end of the day, I think my number one challenge as a rancher is to make sure the guys at McDonald's feel okay about what I'm doing, right? And I think that's something we've got to really think about in our strategies. Now, we've all heard about blockchain, and frankly, I don't fully understand blockchain. I'm not a tech guru by any stretch. But what blockchain brings to the table is the ability to move data almost like we would move product. And so we can link things together, the Internet of Things, and allows us to create that. And there is some value in that, right? And it also creates potentially a point of differentiation. In agriculture, we've always sort of struggled with this. We want everybody to do well, and we want everybody to do good. But the marketplace rewards those who are the highest performers. And so, blockchain perhaps helps those of you who are really doing a great job and who are managing at levels of excellence that would amaze even the highest levels of industry around the world, because I think when people really look at agriculture, they are amazed by the work you do. I think you ought to be rewarded for that work. And I think some of these systems will eventually help us do that. So the CEO of Digital Green, another startup kind of space, looking at artificial intelligence, here's what he said. He said, look, technology in and of itself, of course, is somewhat value neutral. What we generally found, both in our core extension activities as well as in our transport logistics, and even more broadly, is that technology is really good as an amplifier of activities that people are already doing, either to make them more efficient or to reach more people at less cost, or to do the work faster without endangering, and this is my words at the end of this, without endangering or putting at risk the people in our program and in our company. So again, I think even the highest tech guys, when they really stop and think about this, they're recognizing that the technology and how it interacts with talent is that it's an amplifier, not necessarily a full replacement. Will there be jobs lost in automation? Yes, but there will be jobs created at the same time, right? And don't believe me, believe a guy named Tom Peters. I think he's the best. He's in his late 70s now, but you might have seen the book a long time ago, Search for Excellence, that he and Bob Waterman wrote. Tom Peters has been right over and over and over again, and I would encourage you to read some of his stuff because he's just right on the money, and he's a guy I've followed for a long time. But it does bring this question, like, so what does artificial intelligence and robots, what do they really look like? And it's intriguing. And we travel around. We go to a lot of maker spaces and a lot of skunk works and innovation centers, innovation hubs, where we see people working on things. And there's some really amazing stuff happening. We can see some applications in military where we can now send a machine in to secure a locale and to determine whether the locale is safe for troops to follow. There are assisted machines now that will follow a Marine, or that the Marine can follow using that machine as a safeguard. I think those are things, again, right? They're amplifying the capability of people. So the sci-fi folks, will take this to all kinds of levels. I think we're still in pretty much a pragmatic sort of state in this interaction. So what does machine learning and artificial intelligence, what does it bring to the table? Look, no doubt supply chain logistics, no doubt health diagnostics, right? Both plant and animal. I think there's all kinds of wonderful stuff that may happen there where we're going to be able to find problems faster. And it doesn't replace the crop scout, it just makes them more effective. It doesn't replace the veterinarian, it just makes them more effective. Biosecurity, geospatial security, data security, those are big issues, right? I think about all the equipment. I was thinking about today, Matt, I was thinking about all your listeners and what's the total value, the total equipment asset in your customers? It's got to be in the millions and millions of dollars. So how do you protect those assets? And that's one of the questions I think that artificial intelligence, machine learning brings to the table. On a more personal level, maybe sort of in the livestock space, because that's kind of the area I come from, employee training. I think we can enhance training using these systems. Pasture management. I would so love my pasture to tell me that it's getting dry before I see it, because I don't see it fast enough, right? Because it's happening at a level, it's subsurface, and I need to know what's happening subsurface, and I really don't have time to live in the tunnel. So, right, I want my ground to tell me what's happening and to send me warning signals so that I smarten up and can react more quickly. Breeding stock selection, quite frankly, the day is going to come. I'm just going to say, I'm just going to turn on the computer, drop in the software. It's going to tell me which 10 bulls to bid on. I'm going to send it to our seed select supplier and say, look, I need 5 of these. And being the Scotch Irish man I am, I'd like the 5 cheapest ones. And I'm willing to give those kind of decisions away because I think it'll make more logical decisions than I do personally. But let's face it, machines do a lot of things poorly. Artificial intelligence is going to do a lot of things poorly. Here are the 4 that, as I read, that I think machines will do poorly. Machines are not empathetic. large scale creativity is still the place of teams of people, not machines. Machines can enhance what we do, but they don't replace us. Large scale planning across complex systems, AI and machines struggle in this space because of the complexity. That's why in farming and agriculture, I think machines will supplement us but not replace us. And then storytelling. The fact of the matter is that the authentic story is still a human experience told from person to person. It's tribal. It's in our DNA. It goes way back, to the very early days. And if you're a person of faith, it goes right back to the 12, right? And their capacity to tell this powerful story that changed the world. So machines aren't going to take that away from us. I think that's still the role of people. But machines can give us the ability potentially to grab and access data more easily, right? I love this picture because, if I could just have the dashboard ready to go on my farm as I'm standing in the field, that is a beautiful thing because I'm in the place I want to be so I can feel it, sense it, and my own experience and intuition comes to play. But I've got the data in front of me in real time. That's pretty exciting. They're already in working in sort of AI and machine learning to help the operators of equipment be able to make fixes in the field. I think about it, and number one, when I go home, as soon as I start towards anything expensive, somebody grabs me and they steer me towards a shovel or a pitchfork because everybody on our place is terrified of me using anything expensive. But I think about growing up and even with our crews today, the amount of time people spend waiting for a technician, waiting for somebody to come fix something because we don't have the capability to fix it ourselves. What's the opportunity? And then smart technology where it begins to tell us, hey, there's an emerging problem. You can fix this now and not have the downtime. So I think those are things that are going to come that are real that we can count on. So let me go to a quote from Tom Peters, and I just think this is on the money. In the age of advancing artificial intelligence, humans' advantage is the diversity of who we are, right? Those twists, turns, acts of customer love and amazement that the algorithms simply can't match. Hospitality, a smile, honest conversations, real service. Those things are going to be worth more in the future than they are today. And I really believe that. Great, another book, and this is a hospitality guy, right? But Danny Meyer, Setting the Table, runs a massive hospitality space, is very, very successful. But hospitality matters, right? Because it's the human connection. And let me finish with one last quote, though, from Tom Peters. But that said, humans matter. In an increasingly crowded, noisy global marketplace, innovation is not optional. It wasn't optional for your grandfathers, not optional for your dad. It's not going to be optional for you, and it won't be optional for your kids. We're going to have to innovate.
Well, again, I think some great information in there, Tom. And I pulled a few things out that I wanted to touch on. It seemed like I heard the same thing over and over. So toward the beginning, you talked a little bit about how it was a tool. The technology was a tool that we could use when we needed to. But then I heard you talk about how a lot of this machine learning, a lot of this artificial intelligence could maybe be preventative, especially in the maintenance category. And I know some of the producers that we work with, or all of the producers that we work with at some point in time are, standing by the combine with the corn in the field, ready to pick, and they can't go because they've got a maintenance issue with that machine. And I heard that time and time again as you were talking here, that just, using the intelligence, using the machine learning could advance us just in the ability to maybe even prevent some of those problems. And then at the end, you talked about there how it could be a way to eliminate some of the waiting because it could teach you how to fix it yourself, or teach you how to at least get the project started while you're waiting for the tech from the equipment dealership to come out. And I think those are great points. They're something that I know that people struggle with, is that piece of, how do we make our work more efficient by having less downtime and less cost in that downtime also.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that's really intriguing, just think about YouTube, what that's done for us. Right. I mean, we had a refrigerator, run into some problems a year ago, and literally through YouTube, yours truly, I'm the new appliance guy. I took the thing apart. It took a little while, but we got to take it apart. We got it fixed, and it works. And so just something as simple as YouTube, which we, as opposed to pouring through manual after manual, I've got some guy on the screen, Harold from Pennsylvania, who I've never met, and he's saying, "Okay, dummy, here's what you do next." And he just walks me step by step, and he's super polite and nice. And next thing my the tomatoes are cold again, and life is good. So, I think this preventative thing, I mean, even if artificial intelligence, even if it gave me some insight into, if I'm considering three options, maybe it's marketing options, right? I'm looking at three options, and maybe artificial intelligence helps me weigh out the consequences and the likelihood of what might happen as a result of my three choices. It may not be ever get to the point it can tell me do A, but if it can at least give me insight into the three options I'm looking at, it makes me smarter. I'm still in control of the decision, but it's giving me information I need. So I think that's, again, in the long run, I'm really looking for technologies that don't make my life more complicated, but technologies that make my life simpler.
I think that's a perfect point to close out that discussion on there. Thanks again, Tom, for sharing your insights this week. And thanks to each of you for joining us for this week's episode of the Red Barn Enterprises Virtual Field Day 2020, the Summer of Change. We look forward to seeing you again next week, when we will be discussing multi-generational dynamics. Until next time, I'm Matt Long, helping you farm differently, providing information you can't get anywhere else.